The city had just dried from a late afternoon storm. Atlanta's sidewalks still shimmered under the dim glow of streetlights, as if the rain had left behind a thin film of memory.
The avant-crest, hotel stood like a monument to modern hospitality. Tall, glace rapide, immaculate.
Its foyer, lit with precision, boasted symmetry in everything: gold-veined marble floors, black velvet benches, hand-picked artwork curated to feel expensive but understated.
Ariel Moore stepped out of the black rideshar vehicle and into the couloir.
Her sneakers made little sound against the pavement, but her presence had a quiet gravity. She wore a slate-gray hoodie, zipped up to her collarbone, and dark jeans. No makeup. No jewelry. Just clarity in her gaze, and purpose in her posture. She didn't pause to adjust her clothes or smooth her hair. She didn't need to. She took one breath before pushing through the revolving glass door. Inside, the temperature dropped a few degrees, as if the hotel itself measured status through climate. A soft piano tune played in the background, recorded, distant, expensive. At the reception desk, a young man glanced up. Blonde hair slicked back, navy blue suit too tight at the shoulders.
The name tag read, Cameron.
His smile flickered and died as quickly as it had arrived. "Checking in?" he asked, more bored than curious. Ariel nodded. "Yes."
Réservation Undermoor. Ariel.
Cameron's fingers tapped the keyboard lazily. "First name?"
Ariel.
"Tap. Tap." He frowned. "I'm not seeing anything under that name."
Try Moorstone Hospitality Group.
"It's a suite. Should be listed under executive audit, or internal corporate." He clicked a few more times, then straightened. "I have a suite under Moorstone, but it's reserved for high-level executive access only." Ariel held his gaze. "That would be me."
Cameron blinked.
The disbelief wasn't subtle. "You're with corporate?" he asked. "I am." He smiled, but the condescension clung to it like oil. "Do you have corporate ID?"
No.
"A confirmation number?"
No.
"I'm afraid I can't verify anything without credentials." "I understand," she said calmly. "I was told there would be a note on the file."
Cameron leaned under the counter and pressed a small silver button.
"Just a moment," he said, already walking away through a side door. Ariel turned slightly. A couple had just entered behind her.
White. Affluent.
Matching leather luggage. The other clerk greeted them with a wide smile, exchanged pleasantries, and handed them their keycards within seconds. Ariel stayed in place, hands resting casually in the front pocket of her hoodie. Her stance was relaxed.
Her silence, deliberate.
Moments later, the door behind the front desk opened. A woman in her mid-40s walked out, her heels clicking like a metronome of authority.
Her name tag read Rachel Whitmore, front office manager.
Her platinum blonde bob was flawlessly curled. The red lipstick felt more like branding than beauty. "Evening," Rachel said, voice clipped, professional. "I understand there's some confusion?" "No confusion," Ariel replied. "Just checking in."
The Moorstone executive suite should be under my name.
Rachel offered a tight-lipped smile. "Unfortunately, we require prior verification for any suite listed under corporate, especially during executive audits." "I'm the CEO," Ariel said plainly. Rachel's eyebrows didn't move, but the chill in her smile deepened. "Do you have ID?" Ariel handed over her driver's license and business card. Rachel examined them for less than 2 seconds before returning them. "You look different than I expected," she said.
Ariel tilted her head.
"What did you expect?"
Rachel hesitated.
"We've had impersonation issues in the past. I'm sure you understand." "No," Ariel replied. "I don't." Before Rachel could respond, the security guard entered. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and the gait of a former cop. His name tag read Lou. His hand rested near his belt, where no visible weapon hung, but the implication was clear. "Problem here?" he asked, eyes sweeping over Ariel's attire before landing on her face.
No problème, Ariel said, still calm. Just waiting for my room.
Rachel turned to him. "Lou, can you just stay nearby, please?" Ariel didn't flinch. Behind the velvet partition near the lobby bar, a woman in a hotel uniform stood half hidden. Mid-50s, Latina, hair pulled into a bun.
Her name tag-read Isabelle.
She watched the scene unfold with quiet intensity, her mop bucket sitting idle at her feet. Rachel gestured toward the lounge. "You're welcome to wait over there while we verify everything." "I'll wait here," Ariel said. The tension didn't roar, it hissed.
Slow, persiste, unmistakable.
Then, from behind the desk, a voice murmured.
Akiewan.
Soft and accented.
You don't need to go nowhere, Mija.
Let them keep digging. Ariel turned. Isabel didn't look at her directly, just walked past to retrieve a bottle of sanitizer from the cart. Cameron reappeared behind the counter, eyes flicking toward Lou, then Rachel. "You sure this is your hotel?" he asked with a smirk. "I never said it was mine," Ariel replied. "I said I run it." Rachel crossed her arms. "There's nothing in the system with your name." "It wouldn't be," Ariel said. "The booking was anonymous. That's how internal audits work." Cameron chuckled under his breath. "You really expect us to believe this is some kind of secret CEO inspection?" Ariel turned to him. "I don't expect you to believe anything. I expect you to treat people with respect, regardless of what they're wearing or what you assume they can afford." Lou shifted slightly, his posture still rigid but less certain. Cameron opened his mouth, but Rachel raised a hand. "I think we've done enough here. Until we receive verification from corporate, we can't assign that suite." Ariel didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. Instead, she took out her phone, dialed a number, and spoke 3 words.
Disismour.
Initiate. She ended the call, placed the phone on the counter, and stepped back. "I suggest," she said evenly, "you check again." No one moved. No one spoke. But suddenly, the lobby felt smaller.
The air, coldé. The silence, sharpé.
Outside, the Atlanta night rolled on. But inside the Haven Crest Hotel, something had shifted. And Ariel Moore hadn't moved an inch. The silence following Ariel's quiet command settled over the Haven Crest lobby like dust over glass, fine, invisible, but present in every breath. Rachel stood still for a moment, uncertain whether to escalate or retreat. The confidence in Ariel's tone had shifted the dynamic ever so slightly, but the manager wasn't ready to relinquish control. She moved toward the front desk, lips pressed into a tight line, while Lou remained a step behind, eyes scanning the lobby as though waiting for trouble that had not arrived. Cameron cleared his throat.
MS, Whitmore, do you want me to call the regional office? Rachel hesitated.
No. Not yet. Ariel didn't speak. She watched. Observed. The way they tried to hold authority like a shield instead of a responsibility. The way they projected suspicion to mask their discomfort. It wasn't new. Not to her. Not to anyone who had ever walked into a place and felt the weight of being misread. Just then, the glass doors opened again. A family entered, parents and a teenage daughter pulling matching luggage. Cameron immediately perked up, his smile switching on with practiced ease.
Welcome to the Haven Crest.
Do you have a reservation? The father responded cheerfully, handing over a printed confirmation. Within seconds, keys were issued, directions to the elevators given, and a complimentary drink voucher offered for the hotel bar. Ariel turned her gaze slightly toward Rachel. So it is possible to check someone in without corporate approval. Interesting.
Rachel's smile faltered.
They had confirmation. Ariel didn't respond. She didn't need to. The double standard was apparent to everyone watching. A soft movement caught her eye. Across the lobby, near the side entrance to the staff hallway, a young woman with wide eyes and a clipboard in hand stood half in shadow. Her name tag read Sienna, intern. She couldn't have been older than 22. Blonde hair in a messy ponytail, ill-fitting blazer over a black dress. Her phone was in her hand, the screen faintly glowing. Ariel recognized the look instantly, not just fear but uncertainty. The kind that sits in the throat and doesn't know whether to stay quiet or step forward. Sienna lowered her phone and took a tentative step back into the hallway. Rachel noticed and immediately moved to intercept her.
Sienna, can I speak with you for a moment?
In the office. Sienna glanced at Ariel, then followed Rachel without a word. The door to the back hallway clicked shut behind them. Lou shifted from foot to foot, clearly unsure of his role now that no incident had occurred. He glanced at Ariel but didn't meet her eyes. Instead he muttered, "If you're causing a disruption, we'll have to ask you to step outside." "I haven't moved," Ariel replied, voice steady. "You've moved the line." Before Lou could answer, Isabel appeared at her side again. She placed a clean glass of water on the counter. "Here.
You look like you need something cold."
Ariel didn't touch the glass, but she nodded. "Thank you." Isabel leaned in slightly, voice low. "They've done this before." Ariel raised an eyebrow. Isabel continued, "Not exactly like this, but similar. Different people. Same look. Same way of making you feel like you wandered into a place not meant for you." Ariel's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Back in the office, Rachel stood across from Sienna, arms folded. "Were you recording earlier?" Sienna didn't answer. "You need to be very careful," Rachel said sharply. "There are privacy protocols. You're not authorized to document guest interactions, especially not internal conflicts. That could jeopardize your internship." "I wasn't planning to share it," Sienna said quietly. "I just felt like someone needed to remember what happened."
Rachel narrowed her eyes.
"We hired you to learn.
Not to intervene."
Do you understand the difference?" Sienna nodded once, lips pressed together. Rachel's voice softened, but the steel remained.
"You're a new year."
"I get it. But you need to know how things work. We maintain brand integrity by controlling narratives. If you want to succeed in this business, you don't let emotion interfere with professionalism." Sienna didn't reply. She was already calculating what silence might cost her, and what breaking it might. Back in the lobby, Cameron leaned on the counter, checking his watch every few seconds. The energy in the room had grown awkward, restless. Guests passed by, some stealing glances, most unaware that something had been unfolding for the past 20 minutes. Ariel stepped back from the counter slightly and looked around. The air conditioning hummed steadily. Jazz piano trickled from the ceiling speakers. The hotel was still functioning, visibly perfect, inwardly cracked. Lou cleared his throat again. "You still haven't shown any corporate confirmation." "I haven't needed to," Ariel said. "Not yet." Lou frowned. "Then I'm going to have to escalate this." "To whom?" she asked.
The boardroom.
Before he could answer, the office door opened.
Rachel stepped out alone.
Her smile was back in place, but her tone was sharper. "We verified there is a Moorstone suite reserved, but unless I receive explicit authorization from HQ, I cannot assign it to you." "You've received more than enough information," Ariel said.
My name.
"My company.
My credential."
You just don't want to believe it." Rachel raised her chin. "We follow protocols. That's all."
No, Ariel said. You follow prejudice. That is what this is.
The words were not shouted, but they cut through the calm like glass. Cameron looked up. Lou took a half step closer. Isabel stood straighter behind her mop handle. For a moment, everything paused.
Rachel exhaled slowly.
"If this is going to be a legal matter, I'll need to contact our regional director." Ariel reached into her pocket again. "You won't have to. They'll be here soon."
Rachel blinked.
"Excuse me." Ariel looked directly at her. "You're not being tested on how well you follow instructions. You're being tested on how well you see people." She picked up the untouched glass of water Isabel had offered and held it in her hand, not for thirst, but for clarity. Then, without another word, she turned and faced the window. Her reflection stared back, dark hoodie, calm expression, sneakers grounded on luxury marble. She didn't look like power. And that was the point. Behind her, the doors hadn't yet opened. But the reckoning was already on its way. Ariel stood facing the glass.
The world beyond it was quiet, cars whispering down Peachtree Street, city lights blinking in a rhythm only the night understood.
But inside her, there was no calm. There was memory. It came not in order, but in sensations, the weight of mop water on her hands, the sting of being called girl by a man who never bothered to learn her name, the ache in her back from nights spent standing too long because she didn't want to look weak sitting down. The silence in the Haven Crest lobby was nothing compared to the silence she had swallowed for years. She had been 17 when she first cleaned a hotel floor. Her mother had just been laid off from the local clinic after 22 years. No pension. No warning. They had lost power 2 days later. Ariel came home from school and opened the refrigerator to the smell of spoiled milk and reality. Her mother didn't cry. She just sat at the table with a stack of overdue bills and a mug of black coffee. Ariel had said, "I'll find something." And she had. The night shift at a small-budget motel just off I-285 didn't pay much, but it paid something. She scrubbed toilet bowls and wiped vomit off bathroom tiles. No one said thank you. The only thing the guests noticed was when towels weren't folded right. One night, a man waved her over with a snap of his fingers and called her sweetheart 3 times in a single sentence. She'd smiled, nodded, and walked away. Then cried in the storage room 5 minutes later. But she went back. Not for the job. For the jar sitting on top of their refrigerator, an old pasta sauce jar with a torn label. Her mother had written on it in faded blue pen, "Own something." She didn't remember when her mother wrote it. Only that it became her obsession. At 19, she took night classes in business management. She slept on buses between shifts. She ate saltines with ketchup for dinner some nights. The jar filled slowly, $5 at a time, sometimes coins, sometimes folded bills she almost didn't let go of. At 23, Ariel had walked into a boutique hotel in Midtown for a front desk manager interview. She wore her best consignment store blazer, her resume printed on premium stock paper she paid to use at the library. The general manager, a tall man with perfect teeth and a voice that had sold something his whole life, looked her up and down. She remembered his words exactly. "You're very articulate. But we're looking for someone who aligns more with our visual aesthetic." She had smiled, thanked him, and walked out. She didn't cry that time. Just added another note to the fire she was building. Now, decades later, she stood in a lobby that looked exactly like the one she had once been told she didn't belong in.
Marble floor. Ambient jazz.
Staff trained to offer luxury. And yet, when she had walked in wearing sneakers and a hoodie, she had been treated with the same caution and casual dismissal as if she had shown up with a mop bucket. She turned slightly and saw Isabel still standing at the edge of the hallway. Their eyes met again, and Ariel gave the faintest nod. Isabel didn't smile. She just looked, seen. Across the lobby, the security guard Lou had shifted positions again, this time nearer to the window. Not aggressive, but alert. He looked like a man trying to decide whether to follow his instincts or his orders. Ariel knew that look. She had worn it too often in her early career, when she wanted to challenge a decision but didn't yet believe she had the right. Behind the counter, Cameron kept checking his screen, not because he expected new information, but because the movement gave him somewhere to put his eyes. Then, the hallway door opened. Sienna stepped out, clipboard in hand, face pale. She looked directly at Ariel for the first time and didn't look away. Their connection lasted only a second, but it was enough. Rachel followed close behind, her tone even sharper now. "We've decided to contact Moorstone headquarters directly. Once we verify with someone on record, we'll proceed accordingly." "You've had someone on record standing here for the last 40 minutes, Ariel replied.
Rachel stiffened.
"You've provided no digital confirmation." "I didn't come here to be announced," Ariel said.
Icam tout observe. Rachel exhaled.
"We are doing our jobs. You're choosing to make this complicated."
Ariel tilted de raide.
"No. I'm choosing to stay still. And what's unraveling, that's on you." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Isabel stepped forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just a small quiet step that echoed louder than any declaration. "Ms. Whitmore," she said, her accent soft but unwavering. "Can I speak to you privately?" Rachel turned to her, surprised.
Isabelle, we handling a situation.
"This isn't the time." "I think it is," Isabel replied. Rachel frowned. "What's this about?" Isabel hesitated. "About last year. And the couple in Suite 509.
Rachel's face changed. The moment froze.
Ariel's expression didn't shift, but her breath slowed. Rachel looked around and then hissed quietly, "Now is not the time." Isabel didn't push further. But she didn't back down either. She returned to her cleaning cart and began wiping down an already spotless table nearby. Sienna walked to the corner of the lobby and sat quietly, placing her phone face down in her lap. She didn't leave. That mattered. Outside, the wind picked up slightly. The revolving door turned once from the breeze. Cars continued moving. The world went on. Inside, nothing looked out of place. The lighting was perfect.
The musique was balanced.
The counters were polished. But beneath it all, the foundation had started to shift. Because someone had walked in not to demand attention, but to witness the truth. And she was still standing.
The elevator at the far end of the lobby shimmered softly.
The sound was mundane, easily ignored by most guests sipping wine at the bar or scrolling through their phones on the velvet benches. But for Ariel, it struck like a prelude. From the corner of her eye, she saw him step out. He was older now. Slower. A cane in one hand, a camel-colored coat folded neatly over his arm. His silver hair was combed with precise care, and his shoes, still shined to a mirror finish, clicked faintly against the marble as he moved forward. His presence didn't command the room. It lingered, like the smell of old tobacco in a leather briefcase. He paused mid-lobby when his eyes landed on her. Ariel turned fully to face him. Their gazes locked. For a moment, the years between them collapsed. Time folded in on itself, and she was 23 again, sitting across from him in a narrow glass-walled office, trying not to shift nervously in a second-hand blazer. "Ms. Moore," he said, nodding once, voice calm but edged with caution. "Mr. Harmon," she returned. Her voice was still. Not cold. Just settled. Rachel noticed the interaction from the desk and approached carefully, her eyes flicking between them. "Do you two know each other?" Mr. Harmon answered before Ariel could. "Once. Years ago." Rachel waited for clarification that never came. Harmon turned to Ariel. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight. You say that as if you ever expected to see me again at all." His lips tightened, not in anger, but recognition. "I suppose I didn't." She stepped forward once, closing a portion of the distance. "Back then, you told me I was articulate, professional, and a surprising candidate." He nodded slowly. "Yes. You also said you were looking for someone who fit the brand." He said nothing. "I walked out of that office knowing exactly what you meant," she continued. "You didn't need to say it. Your eyes had already said it." "I was protecting the hotel," he replied, voice low. "We had a particular clientele."
Certaines expectations.
"You were protecting comfort," Ariel said.
Notre service. Notre excellence.
Just familiarity. Rachel looked increasingly uncomfortable, caught in a conversation she did not understand but could not interrupt. "I wasn't malicious," Harmon said, not defensively, but like a man peeling back an old regret. "I didn't intend harm." "You didn't intend to help either," Ariel said. He bowed his head slightly, accepting the blow. "No, I didn't." Isabel watched from the side, her hands pausing over a polished glass. Sienna, still sitting in the corner, stared openly now. Lou stood farther back, unsure if he should remain nearby or give space. Harmon adjusted his stance. "I heard Moorstone acquired majority stake in Havencrest last year." 58%, Ariel replied. "Enough to walk through this lobby without being stopped."
Yet here we are. Yet here we are.
He looked around the lobby, his gaze tracing the very walls he'd once praised as flawless.
"It's a beautiful place.
"But I suppose some parts of it never changed." "Some never tried to," she said. There was no heat in her tone. Just a quiet diagnosis of a long-standing illness. Rachel stepped in finally. "Mr. Harmon, were you expecting to meet Ms. Moore tonight?" "No," he replied simply. "But I'm beginning to think I should have." Ariel took a breath. "Why are you here, Mr. Harmon?" "My granddaughter," he said, a small smile touching the edges of his mouth. "She just started here."
Part-time bar staff.
"I came to see how her first week was going." Ariel raised an eyebrow. "And what did you see?" "I saw history." He looked at her again, repeating. Ariel gave no answer, only let the silence hang like a picture frame between them. Mr. Harmon looked away, and in his eyes was something that could have been regret. Or recognition. Maybe both. I suppose I thought my silence back then was professional. Efficient. But silence has a way of lasting longer than noise.
Ariel noddait donc.
It does. He turned back toward the elevators.
Et elle let you continue.
But for what it's worth, thank you. For not leaving. She didn't respond. He walked away, slowly. The sound of his cane faded into the soft hum of the lobby. Rachel exhaled and returned to the desk. Her face was harder now, not with defiance, but confusion. She was watching a structure she had leaned on begin to crack. You never said you knew Harmon, she muttered. I didn't think it mattered, Ariel replied. Until now. Rachel straightened her clipboard. You're not what I expected a CEO to look like. That's not my concern, Ariel said. Rachel glanced toward the side hallway, where Sienna still sat. She saw the intern watching and quickly turned away. Ariel noticed, then walked to the edge of the desk, placing her hands lightly on the marble. You think what you did tonight was policy, she said quietly. But it was pattern. That's what you need to understand. Rachel looked up, visibly caught between roles. I followed protocol.
No, Ariel said.
You followed instinct. And your instinct said I didn't belong. Rachel didn't answer. Ariel turned to Cameron. And yours said I was lying. Cameron's face flushed, but he said nothing. Lou spoke next, voice low. I was just doing what I was told. Ariel looked at him. Then you were doing it blindly. Lou's jaw clenched. He took a step back. Isabel approached once more, this time without her cart.
You still want the suite, Miss Moore?
Ariel looked at her. I want a culture that doesn't need explaining. Isabel nodded, then turned and walked away, mop in hand like a silent flag.
Sienna stood slowly from the corner.
Her phone was in her hand again, but this time not to record. She looked uncertain, but not afraid. Rachel saw her and opened her mouth, but Ariel held up a hand. It's not about the footage, she said. It's about the witness. Sienna swallowed hard. I didn't know what to do. But I knew what not to do. I knew not to stay quiet. Ariel nodded. That's where it starts, she said. Outside, the wind had picked up. A storm was coming again. But inside the Haven Crest, the storm had already begun. Quiet. Measured.
Précise.
It didn't start with shouting. It started when a woman refused to walk away. The lobby was no longer just a lobby. It had become a stage, though none of the players had rehearsed. The velvet chairs, the jazz piano and the ceiling speakers, the abstract paintings on the walls, everything that once felt curated now felt hollow, cosmetic, flimsy. What held the room together wasn't design anymore. It was tension. Sienna stood motionless beside the reception desk, phone still in her hand. She wasn't recording. Not now. But the moment of indecision hadn't passed. Her eyes kept flicking toward Rachel, then to Ariel, and then to the glowing lobby doors as if trying to measure the safest escape route. She was young, new, trying to learn the rules, only to discover the rules were different depending on who was watching. Rachel noticed her hesitation. She stepped forward, her voice lowered but sharp. You're not involved in this. Sienna's reply was almost a whisper. I was standing right here when it happened. That doesn't mean you're involved, Rachel repeated.
You're here to observe.
That's all. I thought I was here to learn. Rachel's tone hardened. Exactly. And what you should learn is when to step back.
Not everything is your battle.
Sienna didn't answer. But the silence between them was louder than either expected. Meanwhile, Cameron retreated behind the computer monitor, tapping aimlessly on the keyboard. The cursor blinked in an empty field. He wasn't looking for anything. He was hiding behind noise. Lou leaned against the column near the entrance, arms folded, mouth set in a line. His authority had no anchor now. He was there, but not present. Isabel returned to her cart. Her gloves were still on, the rubber thin and slightly wrinkled from heat and work. She gripped the mop handle loosely, the same way someone might hold onto a memory that had outlived its usefulness. She looked at Ariel, then glanced toward the hallway where staff usually disappeared when things became uncomfortable. Instead of walking away, she stepped forward. I remember a woman 4 years ago, Isabel said quietly, not to anyone in particular, but to the room. She came here with her husband for their anniversary.
Black couple.
Well-dressed. Quiet. They had a suite reserved. Same one you're asking for now, I think. Rachel turned her head sharply.
Isabelle.
But Isabel kept speaking. I had just finished cleaning the room.
Champagne in the fridge.
Towels folded perfect. View set. Then someone told them the room was unavailable.
Système error.
Lou looked away. I watched the wife take her husband's hand, Isabel said. They didn't argue. Didn't protest. Just left. And I kept cleaning. Ariel didn't speak. She didn't need to. Sienna stared at Isabel, something shifting in her expression. The fog of hesitation began to burn away. She stepped beside the older woman, slowly, deliberately. I saw how you looked at her, Sienna said, turning to Cameron and then to Rachel.
All of you.
Like she was a problem before she even opened her mouth.
Rachel's face flushed.
This is highly inappropriate. No, Ariel cut in, voice calm but clear. This is accountability.
Sienna inhaled shakily.
I recorded part of it. Earlier. When she was standing here. I didn't know what else to do. Rachel moved forward. You recorded a guest interaction without authorization? Do you understand the legal risks involved?
Do you want to lose your internship? Sienna hesitated.
Her eyes darted toward Ariel, then back to Rachel. She looked scared, but then Isabel placed a gloved hand gently on her shoulder. You don't lose anything by telling the truth, Isabel said. You lose by pretending it didn't happen. Sienna looked back at Rachel. I don't want to cause damage. But I won't be another person who watches and says nothing. Rachel opened her mouth again, but Lou spoke before she could. She didn't lie, he said quietly. None of them did. We didn't even give the woman a chance. Just looked at the clothes, the shoes, the skin, and decided. Rachel turned on him.
Your security.
Your job is to support protocol. Lou looked straight at her. My job is to secure the hotel, not protect bias. The room went silent again, but it was a different silence now. Not one of pressure, but realization. The first cracks in a long-standing wall. Cameron finally spoke, his voice subdued. I didn't mean to make her feel unwelcome. I didn't know. Ariel faced him directly. That's exactly the point. You didn't know, but you acted like you did. You filled in the blanks with your assumptions and called it protocol. He didn't defend himself. He just looked down. The front doors opened again, and two guests entered, laughing over a shared joke. They looked around, caught the stiffness in the room, and lowered their voices. A hotel is a strange place when tension hides behind luxury. Sienna turned to Ariel. Do you want me to send the video to your office?
Ariel nodded once.
Yes.
Sans doute. Save a copy for yourself.
And don't let anyone tell you that silence is professionalism. Sienna opened her email app with trembling fingers. Rachel turned away and walked toward the back office without another word. Her steps were stiff, clipped. She didn't slam the door. She didn't have to. Isabel walked back to her cart. She peeled off her gloves slowly, one finger at a time, and placed them into the bin.
She stood a little tally.
Ariel picked up the glass of water, still full, now slightly warm. She placed it back on the counter and leaned forward slightly. When people say this isn't who we are, she said quietly, they mean it's not who they want to be seen as. But who you are is what you do when no one's watching.
Cameron, Lou, and Sienna listened without interruption.
Ariel turned toward the front of the hotel.
The sky outside had darkened. Lightning flickered somewhere in the distance.
A storm was coming. And soon, someone else would walk through the door. Not a guest. A mirror. But until then, Ariel stayed where she was. Still.
Unmoving.
Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't act. It's wait for the world to reveal itself. It began not with fanfare, but with a shift in air pressure, so subtle most wouldn't have noticed. Then the revolving doors at the front of the Haven Crest turned with a smooth whisper. Two figures entered. Not loud.
Noturier.
But every step they took seemed to absorb the attention of the room. The first was tall, lean, dressed in a sharp gray overcoat, leather folder tucked under one arm. The second, slightly shorter, wore a dark suit and a Bluetooth earpiece, his gait quick, exact, the kind of movement that comes from years of moving through corporate spaces without bumping into chaos, only navigating around it. Thomas Lang and Natalie Greer had arrived. Thomas, Director of Human Resources for Moorstone Hospitality Group, had built a reputation on efficiency and truth delivered without apology. Natalie, Senior Strategic Advisor, was known for her forensic insight into systems that claimed to be sound until someone asked them to prove it. Neither needed to say who they were. The moment they stepped into the lobby, the atmosphere shifted. Rachel, who had just returned from the back office, paused mid-step when she saw them. Cameron stood straighter. Lou's shoulders tightened. Sienna froze with her phone halfway down to her side. Isabel stood in place, mop still in hand. Ariel turned to face them. Thomas met her eyes and gave a single nod. "Ms. Moore," he said. She returned the nod. "Mr. Lang." He surveyed the lobby like a man reading a crime scene, his gaze landing on every person who had played a part in the last 45 minutes. Natalie followed with silent precision, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took in the posture, the glances, the silence.
Rachel stepped forward.
Thomas cut her off without raising his voice. "We sent the internal audit briefing to all Haven Crest department heads 2 weeks ago."
Rachel hesitated.
"Yes. We received it. It included the possibility of unannounced executive observation," Natalie added, "and instructions to treat all guests with the highest level of respect regardless of identity." Rachel's throat worked. "We weren't told she would come in this way." "That was the point," Ariel said.
Nathalie stepped forward.
"And based on preliminary observation and video footage just submitted to our office from an intern on your team, it seems you failed that test." Thomas opened his leather folder and removed a printed memo. He handed it to Rachel without flourish. "This outlines the consequences of breach of conduct under audit conditions. We'll review your formal explanation, but until then, you're suspended pending investigation." Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she took the document. "Suspended," she echoed. Thomas didn't blink. "Effective immediately." Cameron took a slow step back from the desk. His face had gone pale. Natalie turned toward him. "Mr. Delaney, your conduct will be reviewed as well. You'll be placed under performance probation and entered into mandatory bias training. If you complete it successfully, your position remains. If not..." He nodded quickly, not waiting for her to finish.
Understood.
Lou didn't speak. He didn't have to. Thomas looked at him anyway. "You're private security," he said. "But you're contracted through our company. Your report tonight will be reviewed. Consider this your official warning." Lou's voice was quiet. "Yes, sir." Natalie shifted her focus to Sienna, who stood frozen, eyes wide. "You're the intern who submitted the recording?"
Sienna nodded slowly.
"I didn't mean to go against protocol. I didn't want it to disappear." Ariel looked at her then, not just with appreciation, but something firmer. "Trust." Natalie nodded once. "We reviewed your footage. You acted within your rights. And with integrity. You've been offered an extension to your internship, now with direct access to our guest experience analytics team." Sienna's mouth fell open slightly.
Thank you."
"You earned it," Natalie said simply. Thomas turned back to Ariel. "We'll issue a full report within the week. But based on our findings so far, it's clear this location's operational culture needs intervention." Ariel nodded. "Start with training. Then rebuild the chain of accountability."
From the top down.
Rachel still stood in place, as though refusing to believe it was happening. "I've worked here for 8 years, she said quietly. "I've given everything to this hotel." Thomas didn't look at her. "Then you, more than anyone, should have known what it means to see a guest as more than their wardrobe." Rachel turned to Ariel. "You really didn't come to catch anyone, did you?"
"No," Ariel said.
"I came to see who would recognize me even when I didn't ask to be seen." Rachel's eyes began to water, but she turned away before anyone could witness the full collapse of the persona she had built around perfection and protocol. Natalie folded her arms. "We'll need access to your office and systems. IT support will be arriving within the hour." Rachel nodded and disappeared behind the hallway, the weight of consequences following her every step. Cameron sat back at the desk but didn't touch the keyboard. He simply stared at his own reflection in the monitor, maybe wondering how long it would take before the apology he hadn't spoken meant something. Lou returned to his post at the far side of the lobby, no longer watching Ariel but now, perhaps, watching himself. Sienna glanced over at Isabel, who gave her a proud nod, small but real. Thomas and Natalie conferred quietly, but Ariel didn't join them yet. She walked to the same spot she had stood in when she first entered, still near the front desk, still grounded in her silence. She looked at the water glass, still untouched. Then she looked around. The furniture hadn't changed. The lighting was the same. But the room felt different. Because everyone had finally been forced to stop seeing walls and start seeing windows. She turned toward the back hallway and called gently, "Isabel." The woman turned, surprised. "You're the only one tonight who passed."
Isabelle gave a small smile.
"All I did was bring water."
"No," Ariel said.
"You brought dignity. And sometimes, that was more than enough."
The storm outside had begun to whisper against the glass, steady, insist.
But inside, the true storm had passed. And the rebuilding could begin. The hours following the audit team's arrival passed slowly, thick with tension and unspoken reckonings. Though the lobby had returned to motion, something essential had shifted. The usual rhythms, the scripted greetings, the click of heels on marble, the low murmur of conversation, were still there, but they carried a new weight. Every gesture now felt observed, even when it wasn't. Every smile seemed a little forced, every glance quickly withdrawn.
Upstairs in suite 1105, Ariel Moore stood alone again.
She hadn't returned to the suite she had originally booked, the one she'd been denied. That room no longer felt necessary. Her presence had already spoken louder than any title on a reservation. Still, the evening felt unfinished.
She stood by the window, watching Charleston's lights flicker beneath the stormy sky.
She could see the reflections of car lights weaving across wet streets, the glint of raindrops caught in lamplight, and behind it all, her own reflection, tired but not diminished. Her phone vibrated gently.
A text from Natalie.
"Initial report submitted. Expect press interest. You'll want to stay ahead of the story." Ariel exhaled through her nose. The press. Of course. Once stories like this surfaced, especially involving corporate leadership and race, the media didn't wait for nuance. They pounced. And this one had all the ingredients they craved: a black CEO mistaken for an intruder, recorded footage, corporate reprimands, and a young intern quietly pressing record at just the right time. But this wasn't just a story about bias. At least, not for Ariel. It was about the silence. The way it settles into lobbies like this one. The way it builds into people over time, calcifying until even those who mean well stop noticing how small they've learned to make themselves. She thought of her mother then. A nurse in D.C., with hands calloused from years of caregiving, whose laugh could fill a room, but whose anger was quiet and razor-sharp. Ariel had learned from her how to endure discomfort without shrinking. How to stay still when others would flee. But she'd also learned that silence was a double-edged sword.
Ce métier protected you.
Sometimes it imprisoned you. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Not the door, her phone again.
Another message.
This time, from someone unexpected.
Sienna.
"Ms. Moore, do you have a moment?" She replied, "Come up." Less than a minute later, a soft knock echoed at the door. Ariel opened it to find Sienna standing there, clutching a small notebook, looking like she wasn't sure if she should be proud or terrified. Ariel gestured her in.
You did something brave tonight.
Sienna entered quietly, glancing around the room like it was a courtroom. I didn't know it would matter. Ariel raised an eyebrow. You recorded someone being mistreated. That matters. I just kept thinking, if I stay quiet, I'm part of it. But if I speak up, I might lose everything. And yet, you still pressed record.
Sienna nodded slowly.
I was afraid. Still am. Ariel poured 2 glasses of water from the carafe on the desk. You should be.
Fille honeste.
But it doesn't have to be final. They sat. Sienna didn't drink. I've wanted to work in hospitality since I was 16, Sienna said. Not because I liked hotels, but because when I was a kid, my dad used to clean them.
Graveillard shift.
He said no one saw him, but he saw everyone. I think. I wanted to be seen. And to make sure people like him were too. Ariel's gaze softened. You'll have that chance. But it won't be easy. You'll be tested. Not just on your competence, but on your conviction. People will tell you to play it safe. That professionalism means neutrality. But neutrality in the face of harm isn't professional. It's complicity. Sienna looked down at her hands. What if people think I only got the job because I spoke up?
Ariel leaned forward slightly.
Then prove them wrong. Let your work speak louder than their assumptions. But don't forget, the opportunity exists because you had the courage to speak when no one else did. That's not luck. That's leadership. The younger woman nodded, still uncertain, but steadier than before. Thank you, Sienna said. For saying that. For staying. Ariel smiled faintly. I stayed for more than me. As Sienna left, Ariel returned to the window. The storm had begun to clear. Rain no longer splattered against the glass. Instead, moonlight pushed gently through the clouds, bathing the city in a quiet silvery haze. Downstairs, Natalie and Thomas had begun final preparations for the next day's formal debriefing with the remaining staff. Rachel's office had been sealed. Cameron's workstation was being reviewed for guest log irregularities. Lou had been pulled into a side conversation with hotel security leadership. But the most meaningful shift wasn't in any report or training session. It was in the way people looked at each other. Pamela, the young receptionist from the second shift, whispered to Isabel during a brief pause in guest check-ins. Did she really stay calm the whole time? Isabel smiled. Didn't raise her voice once. That's what scared them most.
Pamela shook her head.
I would have yelled. No, you wouldn't, Isabel said. You would have stood still too. That's what we do when we're tired of being doubted. We stop performing.
We let the silence do the talking.
She didn't say it with bitterness. She said it with memory. That night, Ariel wrote again.
Not for presse. Not for record.
But for herself. Her laptop screen glowed softly as her fingers typed. They didn't know who I was.
Déteste the truth.
But it's also the excuse. Because if I hadn't been me, if I had just been another woman in worn shoes and a hoodie, they would have treated me the same. That's the part they don't understand. This wasn't a failure of protocol. It was a reflection of instinct. And instinct is trained. So I'll train them. Not with anger. With accountability. She paused. Then added. Let this place remember me not because of what I built, but because of what I refused to ignore. Then she saved the file, turned off the screen, and finally, allowed herself to rest. Not because the battle was over, but because she had survived another round.
Still standing. Still watching.
Still changing the room by refusing to leave it. The silence, once oppressive, had shifted into something else. A promise. That next time, someone would speak sooner. And not just for her. But for everyone who still walks into rooms that don't want to see them. The conference room on the ground floor had never held so much tension. It was usually the place where onboarding materials were handed out, where quarterly sales were presented with stale coffee and polite applause. But this morning, it was different. At exactly 8 a.m., the door opened and staff filed in. Uniforms were pressed, but expressions were frayed. Some looked curious, others ashamed, many simply wary. No one spoke unless necessary. The air smelled of disinfectant and anxiety. Ariel Moore stood at the head of the table, not in her hoodie from the night before, but in a tailored navy blazer over a soft gray blouse. Her posture was relaxed, not performative. Her eyes swept across the room as if memorizing every face. Julian Kim, head of compliance and internal audit, sat to her left with a sleek tablet in hand. Natalie was nearby, a notepad open but untouched. There was no script. Not today. Dylan entered last, shoulders square, jaw tight. He sat at the far end, alone. Rachel was not present. HR had asked her to remain on suspension until an internal review could conclude. Ariel began without fanfare. You all know who I am now. But last night, that didn't matter. A few heads dropped. She continued, I entered this hotel as a stranger. And in those moments, I learned more about Haven Crest's culture than I have from any report, survey, or leadership briefing. Her voice was steady, not angry. That was part of the discomfort. It would have been easier for them to face rage. But calm exposed something colder, disappointment.
Julien clicked the projector remote.
The screen behind Ariel came to life with frozen frames from the night before, security camera angles, muted but unmistakable. The first image showed Ariel standing at the front desk. The second, Dylan leaning away from her, glancing toward the security button. The third, Tom stepping in, his stance aggressive, hand hovering over his belt. No one spoke. This isn't just about how I was treated, Ariel said. It's about what you've been conditioned to see as a threat and what you've been trained to dismiss as acceptable. Pamela, seated near the middle, looked nervously at her notepad, though she hadn't written anything. Loretta, standing quietly in the back with her hands folded, nodded once. She didn't need to speak.
She'd spoken last night.
Ariel gestured to Julian. He tapped the screen again, playing a brief clip, 30 seconds of the audio from Pamela's recording.
Dylan's skeptical tone.
Rachel's clipped voice.
Ariel's calme. Tom's interrogative stance. Then silence again.
Bias, Julian said simply, isn't always loud. Sometimes it wears a blazer and says, I'm just following protocol. But what we saw last night wasn't policy. It was instinct, wrapped in politeness. He looked toward the room. And it failed.
Ariel stepped forward again.
No one in this room is being asked to be perfect. You're being asked to be aware. Because awareness is what stops someone from calling security when they should be offering hospitality. Dylan shifted in his seat. I thought I was doing my job, he said, not defensively, just plainly. You were doing a version of it, Ariel replied. But when doing your job means forgetting how to treat someone like a human being, it's not enough. Pamela raised her hand hesitantly. Ariel nodded. I recorded it, she said quietly. Because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't even think it would matter. But watching it again, it was worse than I realized.
You trusted your gut, Ariel said. And you trusted the truth.
That's integrity. That's what this company needs more of, not less. Loretta finally stepped forward from the back. I've worked here since the ribbon cutting, she said. I've seen people come and go, seen guests treated like kings and queens, and others treated like they were a bother. Sometimes that difference came down to money. Sometimes, color. But last night was the first time I saw someone stand still long enough for the truth to come out. She looked toward Ariel, then around the room. It made me feel proud. And ashamed. Because I've been quiet too many nights. Ariel turned to her. You weren't quiet when it counted. Loretta smiled. Thank you, baby. But we both know one moment doesn't fix a whole culture.
No, Ariel said.
It doesn't. But it starts the process. Julian moved to the next slide, a list of new protocols. All front-facing staff will undergo expanded diversity and empathy training. These aren't check-the-box modules. These are immersive scenario-based programs that force you to challenge your assumptions in real time. He continued, every month, we'll rotate secret guests from internal leadership, people who will check in under neutral aliases. Your treatment of them will be logged. It won't be about test scores. It'll be about patterns. There were murmurs now, nervous, not hostile. And every department will submit anonymous reports on observed behavior. Silence will no longer be safety. It will be an indicator. Dylan looked up.
And if we do all that?
If we try to do better. Ariel replied, then you grow.
And you stay.
But this isn't just about compliance. It's about culture. She turned to Pamela. You've been offered a full-time guest experience role, starting immediately. You'll shadow Julian, work with internal training, and help shape the culture you chose to protect last night. Pamela looked stunned. I didn't do it to be promoted. I know, Ariel said. That's why you deserve to be. Natalie finally spoke. Let this be clear, this isn't a punishment session. It's a line in the sand. From this day forward, we will not just serve guests. We will see them. All of them. Ariel stepped back to the front of the room, her final words quiet but sharp. I didn't come to embarrass you. I came to test whether our vision matched our reality. Last night, it didn't. But this morning, it can. It starts with you. She left the room without waiting for applause. There wasn't any.
Juste silence.
Heavy. Honest.
Downstairs, the lobby felt différent again.
The air was lighter, not with ease, but with responsibility.
The shift had begun.
As she passed the front desk, Dylan met her gaze and didn't look away. Pamela stood straighter, phone tucked away. Loretta was wiping down the counter with more pride than routine. And Ariel kept walking, forward, not away.
The story wasn't ouvert.
But it was hers now. The sun hung high by the time Ariel returned to the lobby. Morning traffic had given way to the calm lull of mid-morning footfall, with guests moving between checkout lines and coffee breaks. The soft jazz that played overhead seemed more subdued now, as if it too understood the shift that had begun overnight.
The front desk staff stood a little tally.
Pamela, now wearing a small employee badge labeled Guest Experience Associate, Trainee, walked beside Loretta, both exchanging brief words as they checked the display counter for fingerprints and clutter. Nothing needed cleaning, yet they cleaned anyway. It wasn't about the marble anymore. It was about the message. Ariel walked across the lobby floor with the same measured grace she'd had the night before, but this time, every step carried weight in a different way.
She wasn't invisible.
She wasn't being assessed. She was seen, acknowledged, and respected, not because her title was finally known, but because her presence demanded it now. Tom, the security guard, nodded at her as she passed. It wasn't the sharp salute of someone performing. It was quieter. Humbled. His posture was relaxed now, arms no longer crossed, his eyes softer. The subtle shift wasn't lost on her. Ms. Moore, he said, not stopping her. Just offering. She turned. Yes. I reviewed the footage this morning. All of it. His voice was low. And I want to say, I didn't see it clearly last night. But I do now. Ariel studied his face. No excuses. No begging.
Just honesty.
She appreciated that more than any apology. It takes more strength to name a mistake than to hide behind it, she said. Keep naming them. I will, he said. I don't want to be the kind of man who only protects some people. She nodded once and kept walking. Across the lobby, Isabel stood by the linen cart near the elevator bay. When she noticed Ariel, she froze briefly, then approached. Ma'am, she said quietly, I wanted to thank you for not turning away when you saw what happened last night. You mean when I was dismissed in my own building? Ariel raised an eyebrow, but her tone remained gentle. I mean when you didn't let them rewrite the story. Ariel paused, then smiled slightly. You were the one who took the risk. You saw something and decided silence wasn't an option. That's not small. Isabel bit her lip, eyes flicking toward the hallway. Last year, a black couple from D.C. was turned away from a premium suite. They had a confirmation. It wasn't honored. I wanted to speak up then, but the stakes were different, Ariel finished for her.
I understand.
Back then, I thought if I stayed quiet, I could fix things from the inside later. But later never came. It rarely does on its own, Ariel said. But it's here now.
And you're still here. That is what matters.
From the mezzanine, Julian observed the lobby with his tablet in hand. He was noting the dynamics, the posture shifts, the greetings between staff and guests.
Every interaction mattered now.
He approached Ariel as she moved toward the guest cafe. 2 external auditors arrived 15 minutes ago, he said. They'll be running anonymous guest experiences over the next 72 hours. Perfect, Ariel replied. Let's keep the staff unaware. The goal isn't to catch them off guard, it's to let them reveal who they are. Julian nodded. And Linda? She'll have her hearing tomorrow morning, Ariel said, her voice cool. She can still respond with dignity if she chooses. Do you think she'll fight it? Ariel considered. People like Linda often believe they're protecting something sacred. But what they're protecting is a system that once rewarded them for upholding invisible barriers. When those barriers start to fall, they scramble. Whether she fights or learns, well, that's up to her. They stopped walking near the cafe counter. Two baristas, young, enthusiastic, wearing pins that read "People First Always," greeted her with a smile that didn't feel rehearsed.
Miss Moore, your usual. She looked softly.
You remembered? You like your coffee strong and your kindness stronger, the girl said with a wink. Very well trained, Julian said under his breath. As they waited for the order, Pamela approached again, this time holding a slim folder. Guest experience surveys from the past month, she said. I flagged a few entries that stood out. One guest mentioned being asked 3 times if she was at the right hotel, and she was staying in the presidential suite. Ariel took the folder. Send this to HR and copy my office. We're going to start a pattern audit.
Yes, ma'am. Ariel studiait Pamela for a moment.
She was composed, but young. Eager, but unpolished. You doing okay with all of this? She asked. Pamela nodded. I've never worked anywhere where telling the truth didn't mean risking everything.
Now you work somewhere where the truth build everything, Ariel said.
But it comes with a cost. Make sure you're ready to carry it. I am, Pamela said. Julian gave her an encouraging smile before she headed back toward the staff offices. Ariel turned to the windows again. Outside, a family was arriving with luggage. Black father, Latina mother, 2 children bounding ahead of them with rolling backpacks. The doorman greeted them cheerfully. The concierge stepped forward to assist. It looked normal. But Ariel knew what it really was, progress in motion. She walked back to the lobby desk.
Dylan stood there.
No one else around him. He looked up and waited. Can I say something? He asked. You can, Ariel said. I was raised to believe I didn't have bias.
He grew up in a diverse neighborhood.
I had black teachers.
Latino neighbor.
But last night, he trailed off. You saw what was under the surface, she finished for him. He nodded. I judged you in seconds. And I did it with a smile. That's what hurts the most. Ariel studied him. You have 2 choices now, she said. You can pretend last night was a fluke. Or you can admit it was a mirror. Which do you want to be remembered for? He swallowed.
The mirror.
Then start by reflecting it to others, she said.
Hold your peer accountable. Teach them what you learned. Don't waste your mistake.
Use it.
Yes, ma'am.
She didn't offer him absolution. Just clarity. As the elevator dinged, she turned toward it. A guest in a wheelchair was waiting as the doors opened. Tom, the security guard, stepped forward and held the door. It wasn't dramatic. Just thoughtful. But that small kindness told her more than any training manual ever could. In the span of 24 hours, the soul of Havencrest had been cracked open, and the healing had begun. But there was still one floor left to visit. One conversation left to have. And Ariel was ready. The conference room door swung open again later that morning. It was quieter this time. No cameras, no audit team, no senior executives. Just staff, some hesitant, some resigned, gathered to hear the final words on a night that had reshaped their understanding of what hospitality truly meant.
Ariel stood at the front more.
Her gaze was steady, carrying the weight of all that had happened. The room was filled with familiar faces, some still tense, others trying to mask the fatigue of accountability. She began softly. Yesterday, when I arrived here anonymously, many of you didn't know who I was. That moment revealed something essential. It showed me what this hotel values when no one is watching. And what it overlooks. There was a silence that stretched and held itself.
No one interrupted.
No one shifted nervously. Ariel continued, we speak often of guest experience and professionalism, but professionalism is hollow if it excludes basic respect. And guest experience is meaningless if it only serves those deemed worthy. She let the words settle. The weight of them hung in the room, palpable and undeniable. I'm not here to punish. I'm here to ask all of us to reflect. To listen. To learn. Because if this hotel fails to change, it will fail its mission. It will fail its guests. And it will fail each of you. Heads nodded slowly. Eyes met, some filled with resolve, others with hesitation. Pamela stood at the back of the room, her badge glinting faintly in the light. Her hands were folded tightly in front of her. She looked nervous but determined. When Ariel finished speaking, a small voice rose from near the back. MS Moore. Pamela's voice was soft but carried enough strength to break through the room's tension. Can I say something? Ariel nodded encouragingly. Pamela stepped forward, her voice trembling at first but growing steadier. I was scared to record what happened the night you arrived. I didn't want to lose my internship. But when I saw how you were treated, I knew silence wouldn't help. She looked around the room. I think a lot of us feel that way sometimes. Like we're caught between doing what's right and doing what's safe. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. I want to help change things, Pamela continued. Not just by watching and reporting, but by being part of the solution.
Ariel smiled softly.
That courage to speak, to act and to stay despite fear, is what this company needs. And that's why you'll be working with me directly from now on. Pamela's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. Ariel turned to the room at large. Each of you plays a role in shaping the culture here. Change isn't easy. It's uncomfortable. It demands honesty and humility. She paused, then added, but it's necessary. Lou, the security guard, cleared his throat and stepped forward. I want to apologize for my part in last night's events. I wasn't aware of my biases, but I am now. I'm committed to doing better. Ariel nodded. Acknowledging our blind spots is the first step. It's the foundation of growth. Dylan spoke next.
I'm sorry, MS Moore.
I judged you unfairly. I want to learn how not to let those assumptions control me. Ariel looked at him with a measured expression. That honesty means you're ready. Now you have to keep choosing it, every day. The room shifted. The distance between staff and leadership felt smaller, more real. Ariel stepped back and looked out the window toward the city skyline.
The early sun painted the glass in soft gold, promising a new day.
When she turned again, her gaze landed on a young woman standing quietly by the door. Aubrey, the new overnight attendant, looked unsure but hopeful. She stepped forward, holding a small folded piece of paper. I wanted to give this to you, she said softly. Ariel took it. Opening the note, she read.
Thank you for standing still.
Because you did, I know I can speak now. Aubrey looked up, eyes shining with the fragile hope of those just beginning to find their voice. Ariel folded the note carefully and smiled. Thank you, Aubrey. And welcome to a place that's starting to see you. The room seemed to breathe differently now, as if the weight of old habits was lifting. As the staff began to disperse, Ariel stood alone for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. It was no longer heavy. It was full of possibility. She thought back to all the moments, past and present, that had led her here. The nights of scrubbing floors and folding sheets. The interviews where her worth had been questioned.
The silent endurance. The courage to stand still and wait.
Now it was time not just to endure, but to change. Because this hotel, this company, and this city deserved more. More respect. More dignity. More truth. And Ariel Moore was ready to lead the way.
With questions.
With unwavering purpose.
With the power of standing still. The room emptied. The lobby buzzed softly with new energy.
Outside, the city moved on. But inside, something new had begun. And it would not be silenced again.